Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mind Over Wonder, a series that rounds up my wondering thoughts. I'm your host Candace Briggins. After you think I'll get that, I'm gonna get that intro down. Don't you worry. I'm your host Candace Briggins, and I'm here to explore the big questions about life, the universe, and everything in between. So, growing up, I never really ate much of Chips Ahoy cookies. The ones I was used to eating were always baked by my brothers and sisters. And summers in Alabama, going to the neighborhood convenience stores or the candy lady's house, there were Chips Ahoy, but there were also famous Amos cookies. Yes, famous Amos cookies. It is still. It's the yellow bag with the light blue bold cursive writing in the front. Now, this is just my opinion, but I think Famous Amos is better than Chips Ahoy. hmm Yeah, I said it. But I do think they're better. It's not as sweet. Well, at least in my opinion, it's not as sweet as there's definitely some salt sprinkle all up through that dough because it's just perfection. So to this day, I don't like sweet, and to this day, I don't like my sweets too sweet. If that makes any sense, too much sugar, and my teeth begin to feel like jittery, like they got an itch or something. Like I promise you, I swear. I'm telling you, I envy people who can just eat candy or any sweets nonstop because I can't. Like, I would treat myself to a dessert at the end of the week, sometimes during, but that's like sometimes. And that's if I'm really, really craving sugar. Oh, and yes, another thing, I'm sure some of you can relate, and I think like a lot of you can relate, but too much sugar or candy, and bam, face is gone. Like my chin, my chin just like breaks out, and then I have like a pimple on my like this. I don't even know if it's a pimple. It's like this. It's like this. Okay, it's a pimple, but it's like really hard. It's just I'm not gonna. Yeah, but yeah, you guys. So and also, I'm noticing as I get like older, my taste isn't drastically changing, but I'm slowly itching away from milk chocolate and favoring more like dark chocolate. And as well as trying like new flavors and textures. Like I'm really enjoying hazelnut. Um I still don't care for vanilla. But yeah, like I'm slowly going away from milk chocolate. Okay, but but enough about me. This is about famous almost cookies. Okay, so I favor these cookies more than Chips Ahoy, and like growing up, I still do. And yeah, so but then I fell in love with them even more when I found out that the creator slash baker is a black man named Wallace Amos. Amos. I want to say Amos. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. My older brother told me, looked it up, and it was just like, I was like, what? That's a black man. I love this. But of course, I couldn't help but I had to ask. I'm like, why don't more people know about this? This famous black cookie creator. Has he made any more treats since then? And what is he up to now? Okay, like where is he? This is episode 2, Wallace Almost, the man behind the cookie. The story. Wallace Wally Amos Jr. was born in Tallahassee, Florida on July 1st, 1936. When he was 12, his parents ended up divorcing. Now, he doesn't go into much detail about why he was sent to his aunt's house, and I don't even know whose sister this is, mom's or dad's, but all you need to know is that Wally went to go live with his aunt, Della Bryant. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And growing up with his aunt, Wally had this to say, quote, "We certainly had no monetary wealth, but Aunt Dalla House was always rich in the principles and qualities to a child's upbringing, and it was filled with aroma of her delicious chocolate chip cookies." End quote. Seeing his aunt cook got Wally into cooking and baking as well. Wally had this to say about his aunt. Quote, Aunt Dallas' basic for cookies became the foundation for much of my success, but it was her recipes for life that sustain me to this day. End quote. Oh, he really loves his aunt. I love this. Eventually, his interest led him to be enrolled into Foods Trades Vocational High School, where he studied culinary for 2 years. He would end up dropping out right before graduation, and then around 18, he enrolled in the Air Force and was stationed in Honolulu, Hawaii from 1954 to 1997. There, he would earn his GED and will have an honorable discharge. So, after his stint in the military, Wally worked as a mailman clerk at the William Morris agency in New York City, where he climbed the ladder and became the first African American talent agent. Those are snaps if you can hear me. Can you hear me? It's snaps. Okay. And yeah, so he was the first African American talent agency and signing Simon and Garfunkel. Signing Simon and Garfunkel. Those two. That's so crazy. But not only that, he went on to represent the Temptations, Sam Cooke, Marvin Gaye, and Diana Ross. Give that man a cookie. Get it? Give that man a cookie. Okay. All right. Anywho, William Morris will give Wally the head of the rock and roll department. I mean, he was good. Riley would schmooze his clients by using his Aunt Della's cookies, chocolate chip cookies recipe as invitations. He would throw these signing parties with potential clients and be the life of the party. But those chocolate chip cookies would be the center of attention. They were all the buzz. Wally said, quote, I go to meetings with record company or movie people and along some cookies, and pretty soon everybody was asking for them, end quote. Being such a success as a talent agency, Wally figured he doesn't need William Morris. After all, it was he who brought them the talent. So in 1967, almost left the agency to start his own management agency in Los Angeles. Woo, that was a lot of ooh. But yes, he went on to make his own agency in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, he would struggle. It was said whenever Wally would feel low or overwhelmed, he'll bake cookies. Wally's son, Sean Amos, had this to say, quote, cookies were a hobby to relieve stress, end quote. Dealing with the burden of debt and his failing business, Wally turned to his comfort, baking cookies. This time, making a modified version of his aunt's cookies. Then, in 1975, Wally was probably thinking, everyone loved these cookies and experience of being a talent scout. I can set up shop to sell cookies, right? Like with my powers combined as a talent agent and baking cookies, he's like, I'm gonna just sell cookies. So he wanted to sell up shop, right? So he set up shop to sell his cookies. The location, Sunset Boulevard. Sean remembered, quote, there were prostitutes. We were across the street from a strip joint. We were held up a couple of times, but a few blocks down was the A&M Records loft, where Dad had offices next to Quincy Jones. He saw something. He felt that what he was doing would transcend the neighborhood, end quote. Oh my goodness, this poor baby. Can you imagine a 7-year-old being like held up at gunpoint? Not once, but twice? That's not funny, but my God, poor baby. I'm like, damn you down here, cookies. I quit. Okay. So, with the loan of 25,000 from Marvin Gaye and Helen Reddy, yes, I know Marvin Gaye and Helen Reddy. Yes, I mean this guy had connections. Wally was pretty good. Wally was able to open Famous Amos cookies. Correct me if it's Amos or Amos, you guys. I'm gonna keep switching in and out, but yes, he was able to open up his first shop. Woo! Woohoo! And where there he would sell three kinds of cookies: chocolate chip peanut butter, chocolate chip with pecan, and butterscotch chip with pecan. Which I like when I read that, I was like, no chocolate chip. I'm like, where's the chocolate chip? Sorry. Okay. Sean recalled working at his dad's shop and quote, he will quote, I sit on milk crates to ring up customers. I worked the front, dad worked the back. End quote. Now, Famous Amos Cookie Shop had its grand opening with a star-studded attendance of 1,500, but Wally was truly the real star of the brand. He appeared on all packaging and merchandise, where his signature stew had an embroidered cotton shirt, which you do not see anymore. Like I said, the ones that I recognize is the yellow packaging with the blue and white cursive signature. So yeah, we don't see his face anymore. So in its very first year, the company would sell $300,000 worth of cookies. Oh my god, that's so much. And Jesse Shurutsky, author of Cookies, the New Classic, said this about the Famous Amos cookies. Quote, the concept of zero preservatives craft made cookies was uncommon. End quote. By 1982, Wally had a revenue of 12 million. Wally responded to his success by saying, quote, the face that launched 1,000 chips. Ooh, end quote. Ooh. Now, because of this success, Wally wanted to go beyond mass production. His cookies were disputed in Macy's and Bloomingdale's. It even appeared in Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade from 1977 to 1988, which is one of the biggest, if not greatest, place to advertise anything, any product, right? And Famous Amos began to appear in stores across the U.S. Once again, Jesse Shurutsky, sorry Jesse, I hope I'm like botching that name, had this to say, quote, Amos elevated a product that was seen as an everyday item into a gourmet experience, end quote. Wally would throw these iconic block parties with attendees of Muhammad Ali and Andy Warhol, just to name a few. It just wasn't Wally's Famous Amos cookies that were everywhere, but Wally himself. He appeared as himself on numerous TV series like The Jeffersons, Taxi, and even The Office. Now, Shurutsky, I'm just botching this poor author's name throughout. I'm so sorry. Had this to say, quote, food is part of pop culture, much like fashion, end quote. With so much success with Famous Amos premium cookies, this led to brands like Mrs. Fields, Duncan Hines, and Nabisco wanting Amos market share. Of course, little greedies. But soon trouble brewed. Wally failed to keep up with the brand's rapid growth. By 1985, just a few years after making a revenue of 12 million, there was a reported loss of 300 on sale of 10 million. Wally was first to sell the company. Quote, he wasn't a businessman. He was an amazing marketer and had great promotional insights, but he made a lot of bad decisions. End quote. Sean said about his dad's business. Wiley continued to raise money while diluting his own equity. He even lost a home at one point. Because of this, he had to sell the majority of his store to Bass Brothers Enterprise for 1.1 million. Quote, he sold to save it. End quote. Sean almost continued. Sorry, he sold to save it. He's always been impulsive. A lot of entrepreneurs. That same spark that can drive you to take a chance of prevents you from listening to others. You think you're infallible. End quote. That's what Sean Amos had to say. Wally would throw in the towel after the new company added a shelf stable ingredient and represented the cookies as an affordable brand. In 1992, President Baking Company brought Famous Amos for 61 million, which is 55 times what Amos sold his controlling stake for. That same year, Wally launched Wally Almost Presents Hazelnut Cookies. Unfortunately, he was sued for trademark infringement and was forbidden from using his own name and likeliness, which is the most insane thing to hear. This reminds me of when Bob Ross's son, Ross, was sued because he tried to continue his dad's legacy by painting and whatnot. And those were Kowalskis. I don't care. I don't know. Uh, you can look them up. Google it. Family sued because they had sole ownership of Bob Ross's name and everything that goes with it. So they sued Steve Ross, which is like, oh my god, like I said, it's crazy. So, but if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's on Netflix. It's a documentary called Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed. It's something else. Y'all need to check it out. And poor Steve Ross. Shout out to Steve Ross. Now back to the story. Okay, so Wally had this to say, quote, I was about, sharing, selling his his company pretty much. He said, quote, I was stupid, plain and simple. I sold the company, didn't realize I had sold future along with it, end quote. Lou Aguanon, sorry, Lou, was a local radio talk show and heard Wally's story and was inspired. So he contacted him to start a new business. But because the Famous Amos was trademarked by his former company, Wally had to use No Name Cookie Company as his new company. And in 1994, the two launched No Name Gourmet Muffins, focused on fat free, nutritious muffins. It was eventually changed to Uncle Wally's Muffins Company. But after a few years after the launch, he filed for bankruptcy. Then, in 1999, Almost signed a deal with the new owner of the Famous Almost Cookies, Keebler, as a spokesperson. His son Sean had this to say, quote, it was bittersweet. He was happy in the center of the brand he started. It also had a hard time accepting that the fact that he had, at the end of the day, he was just a paid spokesperson. Ooh, forgive me on that. End quote. He didn't stay long. Wally will walk away from the Famous Almost for good, like all of it. Just he's done. Almost brought back his handmade cookies under the new name, the Cookie Kiwana, marketed in Hawaii, with the flavors chocolate chip. There it is. It's part of his secret weapon, right? Didn't want to use that right away. But his handmade cookies under the new name, the Cookie Kiwana, like I said, marketed in Hawaii with the flavors of chocolate chip, chocolate and pecan, and chocolate and butterscotch. And so it was, oh, wait a minute. So it was chocolate chip, chocolate and pecan, and chocolate and butterscotch, chocolate chip and macadamia nut. Wally printed the cookies with the line, quote, the only company baking from pure, unadulterated Wally Almost recipes, end quote. Ooh, were there shots fired? Bang, bang, bang. But okay, but that too would eventually fail. It is said as of 2018, Wally Amos is working on Aunt Della's cookies, described as quote Aunt Della's cookies are simple, unassuming sugar cookies that just about melt in your mouth and are instantly addictive. End quote. Sean almost had this to say about Cookie Wana and who his dad is as a person. Quote, failed business Cookie Kuhawa. He's a perennial hustler. Everyone wants the great comeback. It's a story as old as time itself. End quote. Now, here's and that's the end, as we know, for as Wally Amos' story. Here's a tidbit that I feel should be talked more about who Wally Amos was outside of Famous Amos. That he was and still is an advocate for literacy. He helped thousands of adults learn to read. Uh, and quote, he says, as a high school dropout, education was a big deal to him, Sean said. And longtime friend and publicist John Ruska, sorry, John, introduced Amos to Literacy Volunteers of America. Wally had this to say about literacy, quote, I encourage parents to read out loud to children at least from birth to 6 years old. I really like them to do it beforehand where they're still in the womb. End quote. In 1987, he hosted a television series designed to teach others how to read called Learn to Read, produced by the Kentucky Educational Television. Amos was even granted a National Literacy Honorary Award by President George H.W. Bush. And although he had many failed businesses, Wally Amos is one of the most successful Black entrepreneurs to this day. So, and that is the end of his story, or as we know it. He's probably still going to be out there and coming up with new ideas, right? But here's my takeaway from after reading and of his story, right? So for me, it seemed like he seemed like Wally had the ideas and the creations for it. It just seemed like he needed the perfect right hand man to help him behind the scenes. Like he'll be the face as well as the idea creator, and then his partner could be the one controlling the finances. Like just a perfect person beside him, and just making sure they have the funding to move forward and still run the business. Think of it as Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Because in my opinion, the way Wally solved problems was with money by selling shares, and eventually just led to him no longer being the owner of the company that he started. Which sometimes you got to watch out for people as well. But man, just imagine the direction if it would have gone if he was still the owner of Famous Amos Cookies. Like I can picture him having his own baking show, or be the one, be one of the judges of a baking competition on a Food Network. That would be fun. So, and he can also host his own baking show. He still can, he can still do a lot of things. He can host a baking show on Food Network or on a YouTube show on a YouTube or a streaming service. There's endless possibilities still. But I just feel like he'll just still be popular and be very well known till this day. I feel like he still has the charm and charisma. So yeah, to draw in viewers, right, from all ages. I don't know. That's just me. I'm just thinking. So, in the end, having great ideas can only get you so far if you don't have the right components to put into action, or you're just going to end up as another cautionary tale of what could have happened. Right. So that's the end of that. That's Wally Amos, the story of his life. I had my little 2 cents to it, but so if you enjoyed this episode and want to continue to learn, or at least pique your curiosity, then please please download, like, comment, and subscribe to the series. And until next time, bye, and remember, don't let your mind wander too far.